Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Max Frequency Podcast. I am your host, Max Roberts, and I have the honor and privilege of being joined once again, for the first time in a very long time, by none other than the pixel art mancer at Yacht Club Games, Nick Wozniak. How are you today, sir?
I am doing very good. How's it going?
It's going all right. I told you before the show we did an episode with Ian Flood 9 years ago, so that was... Yacht Club has since released 5 games before Mina the Hollower. Basically, the entire Switch 1 life cycle is how long it's been. So,
yeah, it's been a while. I wonder where we were. I think we may have been at the original in the original office.
In April of 2017.
2017? No, we were in the Marina office. That was a nicer office. The original office is a very small, office building filled with smaller offices, and they sectioned out, 500 square foot for us. So, we were packed in, but the Marina was nicer. That was actually like near the water. We found some really crazy deal. It was good.
You guys are you fully remote now? Is that a change you guys have made during Mina, or you're switching to it?
Yeah, so since COVID, we kind of went fully remote. Actually earlier, it was actually mostly earlier this year, and we have an office that's kind of small, and we used it for the 24-hour stream before the Mina launch, and we use it for small get-togethers, but it's much smaller than a normal office. It has 4 desks, and we're effectively remote.
Yeah, that's an interesting change over the course of the whole studio's life from all the different phases. Yeah. But I wanted to start out with a congratulations, very much in order. Mina has in a week. No numbers have been reported since, but in 1 week, 500,000 copies were sold. And according to Sean Velasco, that means you guys are golden. So congrats on being golden.
Yeah, no, I'm very thankful, and thank you for the congrats. Yeah, the sales been really good. I've been really happy with that, and especially just in light of how much Shovel Knight originally sold. It was, we outpaced that in a day basically. So, in the first month, Shovel Knight hit I think 180, and then we passed that in the first day. So I'm very thankful and very excited, and glad that that's out there. People are liking it.
Yeah, it is. That was what the Wikipedia told me, was 180,000 in a month. Okay. And that was only on Steam, Wii U, and 3DS.
Right.
Remarkably.
Yeah, we hadn't released on PlayStation or Xbox yet.
Yeah. And then it took a year to get around 700,000. So I suspect Mina is a lot closer to that 700,000.
I actually don't know. I haven't looked at the numbers since we.
Well, 500's closer than 180. So you guys are definitely knocking out of the park. And I suspect it will keep on rolling throughout the year. And I would personally suspect to see Yacht Club at the Game Awards with Jeff Keighley and all that stuff later this year as well. So
I hope so.
It seems like a very good year for the team. Well deserved over 6 or 7 years for the development, right? Something around there?
Yeah, 6, basically 6. 2019 in December was when we released King of Cards, and so a few months later we started working on Mina. Yeah. And ideas had already been going on for a while.
Well, that's actually a really good segue into my first question, which is I played Shovel Knight day one on the 3DS, so I was following along all of Yacht Club's games in development, and Shovel Knight, because of the infamous feels too strong of a word, but the notorious, maybe that's a better word, Kickstarter promises for expansions kept Shovel Knight going for so long, and you guys went above and beyond what I think anyone expected with full-blown expansions. And I wrote it down as you guys were building Shovel Knight in public, or you could develop and respond over time with each expansion and explore new ideas. And Mina, you've built the whole game with no no promised DLC or anything like that. I think that lesson
Right.
was learned. So you built the whole game in one go, kind of not in secret. It's Kickstarter updates, things like that, but very different from Shovel Knight. How was that process for you, going from the more public and iterative releases of Shovel Knight to all in one, for a lack of a better term, for Mina?
Yeah, I think it was different for other reasons, and I think like when the public is watching it from the outside, you're seeing one thing, but from the inside, it feels a little bit different. So, Shovel Knight felt just like working on the next game. It was like, we're doing this. It's we did Shovel Knight. Now we're going to think about doing whatever Plague Knight is, and so we had these ideas of what it could be, and then kind of executed on what we thought we wanted it to be. And then there was a bit of like, the game's out now. Let's do the next one and figure out what Spectre Knight is going to be influenced by what Plague Knight was. Maybe like we don't want to have a game that's all about holding down a button. We can make it more quick, easy access fun. And then King Knight became like this giant thing. And so like we were reacting as we were building, but it felt really much just like sequels. Whereas with Mina, I wasn't thinking about all that, because like it was just a very different setup of what the studio was. After King of Cards, we thought we could do two games at once, so we split the team up, and we had a 3D game going and a 2D game going at the same time. The 2D game, of course, is Mina. The 3D one is not announced yet. And I was actually working on a 3D game, and at the same time, Mina's happening and like slowly growing and sort of this pre-production for a long time. And then we kind of realized that like we weren't really able to do two games at once. Was just kind of focus on one, and so we collapsed back down into one team doing Mina back in 2024. So it wasn't as much like most of what was on my mind wasn't how people were seeing it, or how like it was progressing in terms of like how reaction was happening. It really was all about like the team setup and the structure and stuff. And so once we were able to actually like really focus on it, it felt much more cohesive, and we were able to like kind of get our heads around what our goals were. Yeah, since then it was like really clicking. I would say the last 2 years especially have been really have felt much better in terms of our ability to produce something.
So when I hear of teams splitting internally to like work on two things, my brain always goes to Naughty Dog, how they infamously in the PS3 era went split Uncharted 3 and The Last of Us, and tried to keep that going, and then have not really been able to do that going forward to different degrees. They have their own much larger scale than Yacht Club, just from a headcount perspective alone. Was the idea to split just like we can do two things at once and like get games out faster? Was that the original, I guess, impetus for it?
Yeah, part of it. Yeah, it's not just getting it out faster. It was like we wanted to do two different things, and we had different specialties, right? And I think like we want to do different stuff. Like we want to express ourselves differently. Like at the same time we were publishing Dig and Cyber Shadow, and eventually Pocket Dungeon. So like those were also efforts. We like had a lot of ideas, and we had a lot of things, and we couldn't express them like sequentially. Like Shovel Knight being this over dominating thing where we are like promising ourselves to do these individual games, meant that we were just like looking at NES graphics every day, and I think there's part of it, and not just the graphics, like the genre. I think part of it was like wanting to expand and do more things and try out lots of different ideas. And so, we saw ourselves kind of growing and trying to become more of a broader company. But I think like that just like spread us out way too thin.
My brain goes, I remember this story. I don't remember what it's probably been told in multiple interviews. But I think because you all were at Way Forward, the original founding Yacht Club, And part of the reason that you left, if you correct me if I'm wrong, was that Way Forward would move people between teams. They would be like, okay, now you're going to work on this and this and this. It's kind of, to me, it sounds interesting that eventually Yacht Club would then, in a way, do the same thing that led to Yacht Club being formed. It's
I don't know if I've ever saw it that way. That's interesting. Because like we weren't, Yacht Way Forward had like 6 games going or whatever at the same time. We saw it more as like we have very different like desires, but like all of us were involved, like and maybe that's why it was like not super great, is that everybody had like buy-in on everything. And so like Sean was directing the 3D game, but also had a lot to say for Mina. And anytime you're splitting someone's attention, you're splitting their ability to like really focus. So yeah, that is interesting that we like kind of went back to our roots
and
realized how that wasn't a good idea again.
Sometimes we have to relearn a lesson. And yes. Thankfully, like it obviously has worked out for the studio, and I think maybe kind of reinforced the idea that you're better together all on one project kind of going forward. So I'm excited to see how that evolves, as you guys go on to make whatever is next.
We'll see.
I want, I imagine you've been asked this a lot. I want to specifically ask, what's the difference between the Mina that would have come out on Halloween, which, I mean, from a PR perspective, probably was like the dream release date, Halloween for Mina,
right.
And then an indefinite delay until May. You in an interview talked about how you guys basically went back and looked at the game as a whole to make sure that you could follow through on the promise of creating a game you could play through in any direction while also ensuring that there were no weird difficulty spikes. Is like that the core of it, or was there more?
No, that's definitely the core of it. I think what it is just balance. It's just like we have levels done, but like not all of them were like really great. There's like polish. And part of that just comes from the systemic nature of the game. You're exploring everything all at once. You can go anywhere. And so you can't just like finish level 1 and then move on to level 2 and then move on to level 3 like you would with Shovel Knight or a traditional game like that. Everything is so interconnected. And so having the ability for the player to route through the world in different ways is really important. So a lot of those shortcuts were added. There's also the trinkets were definitely needing some work. Some were really great and kind of didn't change, but others were like really just like, why would you ever use this? And our goal was to make it so that every trinket felt like it was giving you a substantial upgrade, like everything was overpowered, so that the majority of the decision making you're making is not like, is this better than the other one? It's more like, what's the opportunity cost for going all in on bones kind of thing. So there was lots of balance, lots of tuning, lots of like playthroughs, lots of testing, and ultimately it's just that last 10% polish that takes 30% of the time. That just like it was the bringing it to like it's a full game. Like it was not a good game in October. It's like a pretty easy thing for anybody to say. It's like it was okay, but like spending the extra time to actually polish it and make it cohesive and more than anything, like it wasn't successful at trying to do the things we were setting out to do, and so bringing that back into our measure of success was what the last 6 months sort of was.
There's this quote from, I think it's Sean, it was in a Bloomberg article, talking about how the game apparently had kind of coalesced to a point where you, the developers, could play it from start to finish and basically find all these different things that you want to improve. I think the things that you're talking about there, routing, trinkets, other things. And Sean said that the delay was a good one, and you basically had a giant checklist of things and the polish. And so, I mean, that this delay and that polish, that's the difference between highest rated game of the year so far and what you're saying it's an okay game. Is that what it is? Is it really the final push there?
Yeah. I definitely think so. I think like anytime that you're making a game, what happens is you get so focused on the specifics of each task, and every building block has its own level of like scrutiny and focus that has to be required, and you can only really be focused on that for the time it takes to make it. And then once all those pieces are there, you can kind of take a step back and evaluate how they fit together. It can take a couple weeks just to get a boss battle working, but if that boss battle is not fun because we didn't set up enough of its mechanics in the rest of the level, or we didn't establish a meaningful way for you to like have gotten enough progress that your stats are good for this area or whatever it is, then it's just going to fall flat. There's more to difficulty than just the numbers lining up. It's about like how you present the game to the player. And if we haven't done a good job in explaining mechanics through dialogue or events in the level design, or we haven't been clear with the intention with certain items or something like that, then you're going to run into the just general feeling like, oh, this is bad, but I don't exactly know why. And so a lot of like what that last polish does is kind of like remove those rough edges to make way for what we were hoping the game kind of feels and plays like.
So speaking of showing and teaching the player something, I think one particular problem that I definitely had with the game, and I've seen other people, is the mirrors and figuring out the secret of the mirror. How did you get to where you were with the game, like at launch, like the state it's, and I don't know if it'll change at all. I don't know if it'll be patched or altered in any way. I'm not even suggesting that, but like that seemed to be if a friend didn't send me a picture of a Super Mario 64 painting as like the hint, and if I didn't find a lady walk into a mirror in the frozen mountain area, if I didn't see that, I don't think I would have figured it out. And that's obviously a vital part of progression in the game. So how did you guys get where you landed on the mirrors? I'm very curious about this.
The mirrors are interesting because they were something like we were never intending that to be the sole fast travel system. The idea that it does connect to sort of a bonus that you get later. It's sort of supposed to be a thing that you develop a curiosity for throughout the whole game. And since it's tied to basically the last area, that or train yard are kind of like the last tier of area, we felt like you're kind of getting enough hints to get there. There's a couple NPCs that talk about it. The newspaper mentions it. There's an NPC that just like full on goes in there and shows you how to do it. If you go on screen, the scholar guy will like show up and go through it. There's another NPC that kind of hints towards it. So it's like we wanted it to feel definitely like a mystery you're solving, and like, oh, this is like really weird. But also like we're aware that part of the fun of these kinds of games is the discussion that happens around them. And so if you're having that discussion with your friend who like figured it out, then that's great. One of the things we did was we set up a Discord for any of the early playtesters, including the media, because we wanted that feeling of like communication to live and kind of get behind the game. And we never want to make a game where you have to like consult a wiki, but I feel like there's enough there that you kind of like want to ask questions, and you kind of get that something is happening with the mirrors, and you're totally not totally sure why, and so it exists as a mystery in the back of your mind. So like I think it's definitely vague on purpose. It's definitely not supposed to be like this really obvious thing, but hopefully it feels like a mystery you solve, and it adds to the mystique and magic of the world, and not a, well, now I have to go to, you know, mina.wiki.com or whatever and find out my answer.
That is, if he didn't send me that picture, I don't think I would have. I was like, where are paintings? He even said, he's like, you've probably passed one already, obviously referring to, because you walk by mirrors kind of all the time. I was kind of reminded of the Triforce quest in Wind Waker. At the end of the game, you get a map, you gotta go talk to a bunch of fish, and then you gotta go find all the pieces. Because the mirrors gate the switches that then open the final level. So you kind of go on this world tour. And for me, that was a big struggle because it's like, oh, now I have to like navigate back to. I could have been doing this along the way, and I'm one opinion, and how you guys obviously played the game way longer and designed it, and I'm and had playtesters and all these things. I'm sure you've heard this feedback. Where do you decide to stick with your guns on something like this? Is worth the friction that X amount of people will have, and where is it like maybe we made it too hard or something? And that could be anything in the game, not just the mirrors. But like, where do you know where to stick with your guns and where to like maybe we shouldn't have done that?
I think well, one of the things it does is encourages you to replay the content at a higher level, because you are, at any point, you were just more advanced than where you were at before.
Sure.
And so you can see things that you may have missed. Part of the game is also like going back and finding anything that you did miss, finding any gemstones or trinkets or whatever. There's a lot in the levels, and so kind of taking a second pass and seeing the secret paths you missed, or appreciating a shortcut that was maybe not obvious at the first time, having that run back really makes it so that you do that again. And I think like part of that is that we wanted the players to feel like the world wasn't just a series of levels. It is a thing that you can continue to explore and continue to like find new things into, as if you investigate them into them. And so going back and like, where was that mirror? I have to think about, what was the tile set I was looking at when I saw the mirror, or what was the gameplay? I feel like, once you get into the mirror world, you can kind of get a hint as to where each one is located. There's a signpost saying this one's in Queensbury Crypt and this one's in September or whatever. So it's like there's definitely a screen or two that you definitely didn't see the first time through, and so that kind of encourages you to go back and like try to find all the secrets. And then sticking to our guns, it's something that we've definitely considered of like how to make it more hinted at. Because we wanted it to feel secret, but like the guy who one of the scholars is, when you walk in, will just appear there and then walk through the mirror, and that happens until you actually do it the first time. He'll occasionally do that, and after a certain point, that was added pretty late because that was sort of like, that's definitely a hint that's not too on the nose, and we wanted the players to feel like that was still a sense of discovery. We wanted this to feel like this is like a remarkable thing that I had no idea existed. This is like there's more to the game than I initially thought. And we had at one point, I think we had we call them little like, what did we call them? They were like little sneak peeks into the zone where you're in Coltrane Peaks, and then you go into a side room and you can kind of see into the other world, into Astral Orrery. I think we at one point had a little sneak peek into the mirror area, but it just felt like that was the solution, and so it was too confusing. And so we worked hard to try to make sure that it wasn't overly confusing while it's still being a mystery to solve. But I think like finding the thing that makes us all, that engages us all on the same level is where we feel like we can stick to our guns or not.
In a similar vein, the game is chock full of secrets and this idea of surprise and delight that I think a lot of classic games had back in the day, and some modern games, a lot of modern games, not just some. There's a surprise and delight to Mina in finding things in the world, but there's a lot of them. I remember seeing some posts online about like, well, if you stand still in the dark too long, X will happen. Or I don't remember the creature's name, but I got like dragged underground and did like a puppet dance. It was very strange, very weird, odd, all sorts of things. I never figured out actually how to get into the music bar because I was like, well, when is this lion guy going to walk by? Instead of later when I read, you just go under anyone walking by. I was like, oh, duh. So there was a lot of things of like secrets, right? Just things.
Yeah.
But there's a concession with that also that people are going to miss things and potentially a lot of things. How does that feel as a developer? Like you're crafting this thing, this secret, this area, what have you. It could range, I guess, from a boss fight all the way down to just a little Easter egg. And you have to be okay with people not necessarily finding it. I know today you put up a blog post for this ultra super secret hard ending, right?
Yeah.
That people figured out. So something, and I read through that and I was like, oh my gosh, how would anyone, whoever figured it out, props to them. How do you deal with that just as the developer and the creator behind these things, with the team and everything? How does that feel?
It's definitely a balance of like not wanting to put a bunch of effort into something that nobody's going to see, or appreciate or whatever. But at the same time, things that are rarer, not as often seen, have more value to them. It's more interesting when something is somewhat of a secret, and so the levels are pretty broad. We try to make sure that like, when you find something that's interesting and cool, you can talk about it in the same way, with excitement and love for it, as opposed to being frustrated by something. And to that end, we made it so that nothing is truly missable. You can go back and kind of get everything. You're not ever locked out of getting a trinket or an upgrade or whatever. The only thing you might miss is like some dialogue. If there's a character, there's certain scenes where Lionel will show up if you're in the right spot, or involving the kids in September and stuff. So there's, but they're not like critical or really that meaningful. I think that having variability makes the world feel real and more like interactive, and like you are rewarded for trying things and exploring. Mm-hmm. And so it's good to have those kinds of things. If everything was just a list of things presented to you, then it would just be like, I don't know, reading a book or watching a movie. And I think like having games be something that you have your own personal story attached to is like really important. And that, to that end, that was like one of the goals with Mina to begin with, is like you can play each level however order you want. There's no key items besides the train ticket. And it's not even like tied to the character. It's just like a thing that you get enough money for. So yeah, I think like all that to say is like, we want for the exploration to have value to it, and anything that's missable shouldn't be really frustrating because you can just go back and get it.
Yeah, there's nothing more painful than like a missable trophy in a game or something like that. It's like, gosh, now I have to do it again. Too many RPGs have bitten me like that before. If you're not prepared for it.
Yes.
It reminds me a lot of like playground talk. Like you play a game and you go to school and then you talk at the playground and be like, oh, I did this or this or this. And it's like, did you find, this behind the cave behind the waterfall type of thing? Which is always a charming aspect of a game. I remember in that Discord that you mentioned about like having press and playtesters and things in there, I think someone in the press did Astral as their second level, which to me is like, huh? First of all, how'd you
Yeah,
do it? Like, you would have had to go
yeah.
everywhere. I don't know. It's wild. And maybe that, I don't know if that's true or not. I
No,
guess.
there is a bug. You can, if you use one of the trinkets allows you to bounce out of the pit saver trinket allows you to bounce out of the hole, and so if you just do one of those, if you do the right one, you technically can do astral as your second level. It's very hard, and you kind of have to know what you're doing. We didn't expect players to find that on accident.
So is that something that you would then want to patch out, or do you keep that in for like
Yeah.
the speedrunning community or something? Like, how do you balance that?
Well, yeah, you go back and forth. We have patched that out so that we may not have, but the goal is that you complete 3 of the mirrors, not all of them. So that was like the intention there. And there are skips that we have kind of patched out. Some of them more ugly than others. Some of them were like really, really broken. There was southern outskirts one where if you just like transitioned north while transitioning west in a certain area, you could go behind the collision and then just like walk into the final boss's room. And that is just like, that's bad for lots of reasons. Let's just pull that out, But
Sure.
there's other ones like the fishing rod provides lots of skips that we've had to like decide whether to keep or not. And there's definitely been a like push to make things a little more buttoned up, much to the chagrin of some of the speedrunners.
Yeah. I'm sure that's a hard thing to balance too, but I mean, you want to serve the wider audience. Speedrunners are just a
you don't want to
slice.
like, right, but you don't want to have someone accidentally discover something that like really is too confusing, right?
Yeah.
Like if you think that the solution is this weird fishing rod interaction, then you've missed the main path and are therefore like in a really weird spot. Like if you can skip into the in the mirror hub, right, you can skip into the moon exit, then you're entering that boss from the back, and then you like don't really understand what's happening, and then you're like lost, and it's just like that's not a good experience. And if you can accidentally run into that as a player, then we failed you as a player, right? At the same time, like we want to make sure players like who are doing weird things for the purpose of speedrunning get some satisfaction. So yeah, like you said, it's a big balance.
Yeah, I can only imagine, because the way speedrunners break games is both cool and probably as a developer like, oh my gosh, how did this happen?
It's terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely.
and then you might be thinking, oh gosh, I worked on that. Oh no.
Yeah, right.
That's my thing. So you specifically, you do art. You're the art guy. You're one of the art guys.
Yeah.
And Yacht Club is very devoted to accurate color palettes and adhering to the limitations of the hardware that you're designing towards, whether that's the NES or now the Game Boy Color. And there was a blog post that you guys did. I guess it was actually a Kickstarter post, and then eventually you turned it into a blog post about basically talking about choosing a palette, because NES to Game Boy Color is a very big jump in the range of colors that you can use. And you found that designing a palette was made things easier for you. You actually today in an AMA were talking about how the Game Boy Color was like more ambiguous, is what you said, and simplistic, and you had to fight against your instincts as an artist, and then you guys designed this palette. People were even asking you about making a 16-bit game, but then it's like, well, what does that open up? And your design. So I'm very curious about the palette process and decision making for you guys, as the lead artist on kind of the team, I believe. What was how do you sit down and you're embracing limitation? Like why? What's the strength there for you guys?
I think it helps to anchor at everything. If everything is sort of just like, when we stick to a hardware limitation like that, what we're doing is saying this is like this is a target, this is a, you know, our art direction, so to speak, so that we can capture like what that feel is, and that setting that goal early and sticking to it is sort of like one of the things we like to do, and not just art and gameplay design as well. And for the art specifically, this, you kind of alluding to it, the Game Boy Color didn't have a pre-programmed set of colors called a palette that the NES did. The NES had, you know, 55 colors that it like said, these are the colors you absolutely have to use. You're not coloring with color, you're coloring with like paint by numbers, you know. So like when you're coloring the red outfit for Mario, you're like using color number 12. You're not using, you know, the hex value. And as a result, it can compress and be very small. Game Boy Color's approach is different. You're preloading a bunch of palettes and then just choosing which one the sprite is using. So it is a very like high level of compression, but it doesn't have the same feel because you could change what those palettes were. And so lots of different games just had different looks to them. As a result, what we did and what Sandy did was kind of gather screenshots from prominent games that are what you think of when you think of the Game Boy Color, and use that as a guideline. The problem is though, is that some Game Boy Color games are just like up-resed versions of Game Boy games. And so like in your mental space, when you think of a Game Boy Color game, it could be, you know, Link's Awakening DX, where it, you know, Link's Awakening was a Game Boy game and they just kind of like up-resed it and added colors to it. Or maybe it's a Super Game Boy conversion of Game Boy games where they just like applied a palette. Or maybe like it's just like it's so broad. Or maybe it's a game that was like made specifically for the Game Boy Color, and so it has a richer palette. You know, like a like the Capcom Zelda games. Like your understanding of what that is not as solid as the NES was, and so it's more vibesy and like harder to nail down, and so as a result, we made an initial palette. Well, Sandy was the palettes were made by Sandy, but he made an initial palette, and then it was like very restrictive, and so we like expanded it a few years in, and then from there we were just like, let's just stick with it. Let's not mess with it too much. Let's stick with it, see what we can do. You know, it worked with the NES, like why not now? As a result, there are some errors I feel like I would want to fix in the palette. Notably, there's no good grays or desaturated reds. Or rather, we have lots of grays, but they're all cool, and there's like a big step from the darkest gray to like the actual true gray. Anyway, there's like lots of small things that I would want to change. But you know, like once we had that really established, it helps to like that sticking to it helps to define the style. The other thing was that like, you know, the restrictions of the Game Boy Color were so based on the sprite. Every 8x8 was like its own little thing, and so we tried to hint at that in the art, and that was really hard. That was like the big thing that was hard for me to get around, was like it really is based on the grid, and it is really like tightly controlled. One of the early examples was when I jumped on in 2024. One of the first things they did was the opening boss, the Nether Kraken, and he has these tentacles that are like in the water. They're coming out of the water, and so there's this effect down here where the tentacle meets the water, and I had this like 4-frame bubbling animation like you do with I would have done on the NES, but Sandy was like, no, and like he like gave me a tip, and it was just like, do a single ring, and it has 2 frames, one's bigger, one's smaller, single pixel line, and it was like, oh, this is like very, very, very weird, you know. And the result is like it looks good, but it's like I struggle with that like, you know, trying to make things simple and good the whole rest of the project.
Thinking of going NES to Game Boy Color, I guess it is like a whole new world of possibility, even though you wouldn't think that like the smaller thing would be that much more capable or visually capable than the TV version, but totally makes sense. And then like you
Well, it's
said,
just also like what we chose to stick to. Like it wasn't
yeah,
just like it was like we established that that was a key thing for the Game Boy Color, and so we stuck to it. But it wasn't like with the NES, we could have also been very restrictive. But there's just like there's so many broad examples in both systems that it's hard to like really find the true
hmm
uh, paradigm of what that system represents.
yeah, that's a very valid point. And then have you seen a lot of the Genesis homebrew stuff going on these days, and even former Genesis devs are coming back and making new games for it that run on real hardware but are far more impressive than they were, 20, 30 years ago. It's
I
so they're
I haven't, but yeah, it's crazy. The demo scenes for those consoles are always huge.
it's I have to it's some shooter game that just came back. I'll have to find it for the show notes or something, and maybe I'll send it to you if I remember it. I know the guys over at My Life in Gaming and Digital Foundry were just talking about it, so I'll have to find that. It was a very cool looking game. But the other angle I kind of want to talk about, literally an angle, is after 6, 7, 8, and I guess however many years that way forward as well, a lot of 2D games from the side-scrolling perspective to now we're going top-down 2D perspective. How is that for you specifically, and making that kind of switch?
Yeah,
How did you adapt to it?
I think it was difficult. I think it's more than just um like there's more things going on. So in the 2D game, a side scroller, you really have you're thinking about the collision box that the character is, so that they can make pixel perfect jumps. You're making sure that they're not feeling like they're going to fall in a pit when they get too close because of the unreadability of the actions. You make sure that the attacks or whatever are fitting into a nice collision box. Um, and Mina has all those things too, but also there's like so many more rules with the ground that you're walking on. So we have pits and we have the ground, right? But there's also like second levels and bridges that go across those, and where we put shadows, and there's drop down tiles that have little like bit there. You always want to have clear area in front of the drop down tiles. How we render the walls on the first level versus the second level, and it's like everything has these like a huge level layer of complication that makes it difficult to really get uh, to do as much. I feel like I think with 2D with the 2D side scrollers, I could just like make sure that the play field, the part that you're walking on, was clear, and then the background could be whatever. Pretty much, it was
Yeah.
like just a big painting with moving layers, and but for Mina, it was like very very complicated, and um, that was definitely one of the bigger struggles, and that's on top of all the sprites. Well, a lot of sprites have to move in 4 directions, um, and that just like multiplies all of Mina's animations by 3 because we just flip for the left and right.
Sure.
And so like finding out which bosses you don't have to do that for. One of the bigger bosses in the mirror area, he doesn't have up and down frames, and you don't really miss it. But at the same time, like that was a weird decision to make. Like should we have? He's only moving down 3/4 view. Should he have like an up 3/4 view? Like should we ever see his butt when he's moving up that way? And it's like it's hard to know. It's hard to say like this will make the gameplay clearer or better if we do have a different sprite, because sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's better just to have the solid, like what the collision boxes are in that art, and then when you change it, it's like a whole new thing to learn. So maybe it's simpler and better for the player if he doesn't have a new set of animations. So there's just a lot of like new questions to ask with a top-down game, and I feel like all of those are not. Once you have the answers, then you have to implement the complication. And so if we do a sequel, we will have the exact same level of complications. We're going to have all those rules exist and work. So yeah, it's a different beast to tackle for sure.
How do you, I guess, for lack of a better term, study for it. Like you have to figure out a new way to do art and design, even though it's all technically 2D. Like, are you busting out the Game Boy Color? Are you going to read old like dev interview? Like, how do you study and up your craft to then make the game you guys want to make?
I think it's all that. I think a lot of for me personally was just playing, older games and having those under my belt. But like as a team, we would sit down and play weird games and see how well they did what we were trying to do. There's not a lot of games that were as combat focused. Like Zelda he's got a sword, and some sidearms. Like it's very simple, right? It's just like it's a single swipe, and it's more about very puzzle focused gameplay as opposed to other games like I always get the name wrong. Is it Dark Arms Beastbuster? It's like this kind of top down like spooky, like very similar tones. You have different guns and you're shooting zombies and stuff. That's
You got
that's
the name
very,
right.
Projectile heavy. I did great. And then there's other random top down games that just like have lots of platforming and stuff. And I feel like I'm always discovering new ones. There was one I recently was talking about that the name of it just escapes me, but the platforming was just wild. And here, let me see if I can find it. Oh, I don't know how to say this. Nuigier. Here,
Send it to me.
Message. It has like top-down platform where you're jumping from layer to layer, and it's a SNES game, but like just finding reference for games like this was difficult. And so like it had similar goals that we had. So yeah, just like watching or playing these games is always really, really helpful. And broadening your horizons a little bit, seeing how different games solved these problems, and what was okay and what players that have this experience expect, and like what is fun and what doesn't work. We learned that clarity was really, really super important, way more than it looking nice necessarily. Like in that game that I just posted to you, there's a scene where he's like jumping from wood planks to wood planks, but you're really not sure where the actual collision is. You're not sure where the player is going to actually stop and fall through or not, because all the edges are rounded to look like nice broken planks. But that's not fun. So yeah, it's like learning lessons like that is like super helpful, or even just watching old games, but playing them especially.
I like the footage you sent me is like a windowed retro arch emulator.
Yeah, it's a really weird game. Not many people love it, apparently.
That's so funny. I love it. That's of a time. I remember using SNES on my computer, or I forget the GBA one. I have a video of it somewhere, but you're just using these funky old emulators to play weird and obscure games. Did you come out of this process with like a new favorite retro game that you hadn't done before, but you learned a lot, or you like appreciate?
Dark Arms Beastbuster is up there. It's just so weird and like fun and silly. I haven't played through all of it, but like what I did play, it's like it's definitely stuck in my mind. It's also like a very fun title to say if you remember it. Yeah, so it's just like the genre itself is like pretty broad, but like not very well represented. So anytime you find a game like that, it's like, oh, it's like a little gem.
Mm-hmm. I know there's I forget the name of the company that does the publishing. There are these art books of just pixel art from the game. Like they'll do like the whole GBA or the whole Game Boy line or something. I forget. Gosh darn it. I'll have to find it. These big, beautiful pixel art books with just huge blown up screenshots. I imagine that would be
great.
Quite helpful in this project. Now I have to go find
lots of
that
art
too.
Books. I wonder if I have one.
You might. I will find it for the show notes. I'll send it to you as well. So I want to take this kind of train of thought of learning to shift perspectives, new palettes and things like that. And I'm not I'm not looking for the scoop here, more just like lessons and what you and the team might carry forward. It's no secret that Yacht Club was working on a 3D game, will, whatever that may be, and then pivoted back to Mina with everyone on deck. And obviously the shift from 2D to 3D is a whole new world that the game industry had to figure out on its own with stuff like Tomb Raider and Super Mario 64 and Crash Bandicoot, all these different solutions to figure out 3D. And you guys have been cemented in 2D, both the NES and the Game Boy Color, which are very, very early popular examples of platforms. It's not like you were doing the Atari 2600 or anything. A robust system, to say the least, for both of them. I'm curious more what lessons from 2D that you would take into a 3D development, and what are you excited to figure out? Like, what challenge going forward are you excited to like figure out in that Yacht Club way?
I think the lessons that are universal are sort of like what we emphasize and what we prioritize. And what I mean by that is we like how the player controls, and we think that that's extremely important. That was one of the things that we set out to with Mina, is to make sure that like in Zelda, you are very much just like a cursor moving around a screen. There's very little complexity to the movement. But with Mina, we wanted it to be like you're engaging with every tile, and you are moving around and thinking about spacing. And it's more like the complexity of the burrow comes from its timing and its restrictions, right? And so we wanted that to feel fun and unique. And I think like going into the 3D game, we want the control of the player to feel unique and exciting and fun, and that to work across lots of different zones, and have it work with like interesting gameplay objects. Mina's, she has a lot of things that are not necessarily just like enemies to kill, damage sponges. There's also like lots of weird like things to bounce on or go under or jump around, and that's the kind of thing that makes games interesting more than just evil things to hit on the screen. And that's the kind of thing that I think like we've been learning all the way back with Shovel Knight and through Mina, that we'll take into the 3D game, is that like the player control is the heart of the game, and the gameplay objects, the obstacles that you face, are the things that are making it fun. And not just to fall in typical tropes of just like putting more enemies or making weird collision patterns or whatever.
What about like the art? And again, I'm not trying to like, here's what it's all going to look like, but I'm going, because you have the restricted palette and pixel density, and like Mina has like it was like 256 by 1. The resolution's very small, smaller than the NES, yes. And then it's blown up. But 3D, the art potential, as a way to phrase it, like goes way up. You're dealing with polygons, theoretically infinite color, unless you're, for an example's sake, like stuck to a PlayStation palette or something. How as an artist is it more limitation? Is it like, all right, we need guardrails essentially to keep us in check, or is it we're making the Bloodborne Shovel Knight kart racer you've all wanted? Is it how do you keep yourself in check there?
Yeah, I think it's hard because like you said, and what you're kind of alluding to is that like there is no cap in 3D. There is no like end point that is what a 3D game is. It can be infinitely complex. This is the AAA space, and so you could make a game and have PBR rendering and normal maps on everything, and have complexity in how you're doing like ray tracing nonsense.
Sure.
There's just like so many things that, and so many technologies that are being developed for the cutting edge, that one, require a huge team because everything is so specialized, and two, require like a level of like experience in that field that we don't have. We're not going to be a giant company. I don't think we're planning on, expanding much more. We're also not trying to develop the cutting edge thing in Unreal 6 or whatever. We have our own engine and we have our own goals. It is a 3D engine. It's the same engine that's running Mina as the engine we're building the 3D game in.
Interesting.
And we are embracing restrictions, I will say, and trying in the same way that we've always done to bring the things that we value, the things that we played, into the modern age, and showing that they still have lasting, timeless value. I won't get too much more into it, because it's definitely like it's on the horizon, but we had been working on it for 4 years, and so the pre-production is well underway. So I'm looking forward to people seeing it for the first time.
I am too. I am very excited for whatever it is, whether it's Shovel Knight or something entirely new. Very eager to see what you guys do in a 3D space going forward, and it definitely sounds like it'll be something exciting. I know everyone online seems to think it's like Shovel Knight 64, and so it's interesting to think that like, oh well, it will look like Banjo-Kazooie or Super Mario, but I'm excited to see whatever it is and trying to be open to that instead of like putting my own mental bucket and like, well, they're gonna make me a collectathon. Shovel Knight already is in a collectathon in 3D. He's in Ukulele, so that's already exists. So we don't need to go there much further into that. Thank you very much. I did want to ask. I know you guys are obviously still working. It's not like you guys took a vacation. Like, Mina's out, we're done, yay. Maybe some of you did. I don't know, but I'm curious what you've maybe been playing that's not Mina over and over and developing it. Like, what have you been playing, recently that you've been enjoying?
During the last bit of development, I briefly played the Metroidvania. It's not even like a Metroidvania. It's called Ooh. It's O. It's, but the first O has an umlaut.
Okay.
If you just search here, I have it open. I was talking to somebody else about this earlier.
I see.
This game is amazing, and because it's not a typical Metroidvania where you're unlocking abilities and keys and pressing switches. You are unlocking your brain the whole time. Every time. It's like what'll happen is you go through an area, you figure out how to get to it, and then you hit a dead end, and it's just a teleport back to where it started. And it's like it's punctuating that you learned what you need to progress. Go use it elsewhere, and it keeps doing this over and over again. You do unlock one more, like you start off as just the O, and then you get a little bomb, and then later you get a second bomb, but that's it. And that's pretty fairly early on. And every level, single time you like get through an area, it's like, oh, I learned a new technique. My brain has gotten bigger, and it's awesome. You get a really cool like experience of reward of exploration. And there's like these super ultra mega secrets in there too that are hard to get to. But they just are you thinking harder. Anyway, that game is rad. Everybody should play it. But lately I haven't been playing as much games as I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons with my family. We've been doing that for a couple of years, and I am the DM, and so I've been like designing things, and we're starting a new campaign on Friday with a friend of the kids, and it's going to start off as a one shot, and we'll see how that goes. Maybe it'll become a second campaign that we run, but it's been like my free time has been when I'm not looking at documents to help support media inquiries and answering interviews. I've been looking at documents to help support D&D campaigns and develop monsters and stuff.
That's awesome. I love it. How old are your kids, roughly?
My daughter is 12, and then I have twin boys that are 10.
Okay. So do they ever, you end a game and they go to bed and like, Dad, ah!
Yes, there has been emotional regulation issues where we have ended nights where there's crying and gnashing of teeth, and I can't believe you're doing this. I might as well just be dead. They're talking about their character, of course.
Yes.
And I'm like, guys, like, just, it'll be fun. You know, they're still growing into it, I think, but
Sure.
They have a good time usually.
That's awesome. I love it. I love to hear it. That's great. I will now look at it. It sounds to me more like a Metroid Brainia and like Outer Wilds in a way. It's like, oh, if I just think about this hard enough, I'll finally figure it out.
That's exactly.
Okay.
That's a really good analogy, actually, because there was no, like, in Outer Wilds, there was no like get the yellow key. It was just like your brain has the yellow key now.
Yeah, you are the yellow key. I was the yellow key all along.
The whole time, yeah.
Oh, what a good game. What a great game. So I will definitely, I'm going to add this to the old wish list. It's actually on sale on Switch right now. So as of recording. So it goes until July 2nd. So if you're listening to this after July 2nd, I mean, still go check it out. It's just not on sale for 15% off. So there you go.
It's $10. You got $10.
Yeah, $10 is not bad at all. And Mina is $20. So if anything that we talked about sounded super interesting to you, please go check it out. It is available on the Switches, the PlayStations, the Xboxes, the PCs. So yeah, you can play it anywhere you get games. Woz, thank you so much for joining me, spending some time. Hopefully it's not another 9 years until we talk again.
Hopefully it's not another 9 years till we release another game.
well, you did release other games in between times, so to be fair, you weren't alone. You publish more games. Cyber Shadow is another great one. Just gonna throw that out there. I feel like Cyber Shadow gets forgotten a lot. I don't know.
Definitely.
People should play Cyber Shadow. It's awesome.
I agree. I 100% agree.
So thank you so much. If you want to see Woz's stuff, he's at Yacht Club Games. Go check out Mina the Hollower. Go play Shovel Knight. I found out today Shovel Knight DX isn't. I thought it was out. I guess it's not. Not to maybe bring up a sore subject. I don't know. But anyway, there's more. There's so much Shovel Knight. It's so good. Go play it, all of it, and keep your eyes peeled for whatever they're working on next. One day, eventually, we'll find out. If you would like to see anything that we spoke about, you can check your show notes out in the podcast player of choice, or go to maxfrequency.net/MFP/54. Links to all the things will be there. Check it out. You could listen to my other podcast, Chapter Select, where we explore a series and bounce back and forth between its entries, exploring their evolution, design, and legacy. I promise more episodes are coming. Castlevania is difficult to play a lot of those. But anyway, that is coming one day, I promise. I swear. Thank you all so much for listening. And until next time, adios.